privilege. How can you claim privilege when you said it on TV? You were on Laura Ingram's show saying these things, saying you communicated with these people. So even if you're saying you can't share, the fact that you share, where did you communicate? You put it on TV. You repeatedly do it beyond the gag order. By now you should know somebody should have told her ass to stop saying this and should continue. It's not willful. So any immunity she would have had because she wasn't told, the minute you continue to do it beyond the court order, you do not get the benefit of qualified immunity. Put a lien on her tracks. Lien on her tracks. So today I am exposing why the Trump administration's incapable of shutting their trap and not always being on social media on Fox News, playing up to their base, because when they do so, because they lack the emotional intelligence and they feel they must always be litigating and presenting their case before the MAGA base, they essentially undermine every single thing that the Department of Justice is doing in the courts. And here's an example of it. Trisha McLaughlin, who I cannot stand, who is the Deputy Homeland Security Secretary and is the chief propagandist for Kristi Noem, was popping off on Fox News recently this weekend. And because she was popping off, she, by herself, with her, triggered not one but two judges to punish the Trump administration, that's right, the Department of Justice, because of her loud ass mouth. Yes. And against this man, Cuauhtemoc Obrego-Garcia. You might have known about him, but don't worry, I'm going to talk a little bit more, give you more context so that you know what I'm talking about. But the Trump administration is going after him in not one but two cases, in Tennessee in a criminal case, and then also an immigration case in Maryland. Yeah. And he's winning. He's kicking their butt. And you know he's kicking their butt because they just keep yapping and keep talking and keep popping off and just thank you. So not just her, but also Tom Blanche, who is the Deputy Attorney General, who should know better. But nope, he too cannot resist the lure of Fox News and Laura Ingraham, who calls them in. They don't know how to say no. So they come in and they undermine their case. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to break down these two examples. I'm going to play it for you and let you know it and go bit by bit by bit to show you the extent to which they undermine their own case. And they just keep doing it, keep at it. And I'm going to give you a little bit more background and in the end tell you how this is part of a larger strategy. It could be a model, because at the end of the day, this guy, Kilmar Obrego-Garcia, whether they try to deport him or not, I'm going to get into that later on, his lawyers can continue to work and just take all of their money. And sadly, when he takes their money and he sues them, including Fox News, because I'm going to tell you to the extent to which Fox News also is culpable. I guess they're not over losing money for defaming entities and people because they keep doing it. Something that this person in the Fox News segment said, I'm going to tell you how it's defamatory and give you the background, and I'm going to give you the receipts because that's what I do. I'm JJ Legal. If you don't know me, I am in the dockets. What does that mean? That means I take you beyond the headlines. So when you see the headlines, the shock and awe, it's so much, it's overwhelming, and there's so many news items that things get lost in the fray. I follow up. I'm following the dockets, and I can let you know, based on my experience since January 2025, that a lot of things they quietly actually settle. They eventually do actually abide by court decisions. You would never know it. They resist, and they hem and haw. Sometimes the plaintiffs have to go back 2 or 3 times to the courts, but they do. And I'm going to put here is a list. I had to create this because people always say they don't abide by law, they don't abide by suits. So I said, let me create a chart of some of the biggest examples I've seen while watching the dockets of them actually abiding. They do something illegal, someone sues them, they lose in court, then they follow through and they follow up. They've been doing this consistently since January 2025. So I said, I'm going to create a chart so I can always have that to share there. You can screenshot that. So that people say they don't abide by decisions, they don't abide by court decisions, they ignore the decisions. No, they abide. So that's what I do here on JJ Legal. And if you're new here and you would like to have a source for calm, for understanding, and I invite you to join, subscribe, follow, depending on where you're watching this. Share this video with other people. Binge watch any one of my playlists if you're watching this on YouTube or TikTok. And sign up for my newsletter at jjlegal.com. Yeah, so I'll talk to you more about other ways you can support me on the back end. But in the meantime, let's get to it. Let's just break these down. All right, shall we? You ready for it? All right, let's go. You can follow along. I'm going to give you some background how we got here for those of you who may not understand what's going on with this guy, Cuauhtemoc Obrego-Garcia. So his whole deal is that he's from El Salvador. Around 2017 or so, he came to the United States when he was like a teenager. His mom's sent him because there was a lot of gang violence, and his parents and family had a store. They were threatened. They were being blackmailed, and they were trying to recruit Kilmar into the gang. So his mom sent him to the United States. He came and applied for asylum. He was not granted asylum initially. However, an immigration judge in 2017 decided, okay, you know what? You do have a callable claim for persecution in your native El Salvador. So we're not going to deport you just yet. We're going to still process you. And the judge says that the United States government should not send him to El Salvador. American judge said that. And after the judge indicated that, they gave him a work permit so you can continue to work, because you can't just be here while your case continues and we figure things out. That's common. And while he was doing that, eventually found, the love of his life. They got married. They had a kid. His wife had another kid, so he's a step kid. He's working as a sheet metal worker, apprentice in Maryland, just living his life and checking in once in a while. Quick sidebar, a lot of the people that the Trump administration have been using to deport, you might have noticed that they said they were going after criminals. They either ran out of criminals because Joe Biden had deported them all. They are getting criminals. However, Donald Trump has this aggressive mass deportation now, and he's a xenophobe, and he is set on a campaign trail. He doesn't like the fact the United States is so multicultural, despite the fact that he himself is an immigrant. He just got here. His mom was from Scotland. All his kids are half immigrant. All his ex-wives are immigrants. His current wife is an immigrant. The genius grant. So anyway, I digress. But for the most part is that he doesn't like, they're trying to just get rid of people. And Stephen Miller, I call him a Jewish Nazi, is trying to cleanse the United States, depopulate the United States of people of color. So they're doing whatever they can to remove people of color as possible. And Cuauhtemoc Obrego got caught up in that sweep and was deported along with about 200-something Venezuelan men and other Hispanic and Latino men under a ruse. Donald Trump used this old law called the Alien Enemies Act. Subsequently, that Alien Enemies Act, by the way, was determined is not the proper use, but notwithstanding it, on March 14th, he invoked it. He did executive order. Because of that executive order, they quickly rushed a bunch of people and sent them to this prison in El Salvador, and they were tortured for 100 days. Kilmar got off early. But anyway, for the most part, that's how he ended up there. But of course, it's in El Salvador. There was an order that said, don't send this man to El Salvador. So the Trump administration was wrong. And they admitted so. Well, not they. There's a Department of Justice attorney named Erez Ravine, who has since turned into a whistleblower. He was fired because he correctly said that it was a mistake. Because again, 2017, a judge said don't send him to El Salvador. The United States sent him anyway. And Kilmar is not the only person who was deported to wrong places despite a court order. There's several others of them I'm going to talk about later on in this case, and who were deported, and some people they had to bring back, and Kilmar was one of those people who had to bring back. He sued because he's from Maryland. He lives in Beltsville, Maryland. The district court judge, Paula Zenas, was like, okay, you admitted that it was a mistake, bring him back. They hem and haw, they delayed. Finally, it was appealed to the United States Supreme Court. The Trump administration appealed it because they didn't want to bring him back. And all 9 justices of the United States Supreme Court, including Clarence Thomas and Justice Alito and Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh and Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, all the conservatives, along with the liberal-leaning Sonia Mayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Justice Elena Kagan, all of them said, you have to facilitate this man's return. All 9. And so the Trump administration had to eat crow. You know why? Because before then, all of them had been popping off on social media. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio and Tom Homan and Stephen Miller were saying he's not ever come back, he's a criminal, saying all sorts of things that's not true. I'm going to talk about that later on. Lying on this man, saying all sorts of stuff, he's not come back. But so they had to eat crow. And how did they bring him back? They lied a lot on the dockets, and we know that because Erez Ravine, after he was fired, he came back in a whistleblower lawsuit and revealed that after he left the courtroom, the Department of Justice attorney, who I always talk about, his name is Drew Ensign, asked Erez, and this is according to Erez's testimony, why did you not tell the judge that he was an MS-13 member? And Erez says, because there's no proof of that. There's no evidence of that. Since 2017, there's no proof. How am I saying this? I have a duty of candor to the courts. Put a pin in that. Drew Ensign asking him, why didn't he say this? It was not true. There's no evidence. It's 2025. They've not produced evidence, but they insist on keep saying that over and over again. slander, defamation. And when Fox News repeat slander, defamation, they're on the hook for that. Put a pin in that. Having to eat crow is not good for those people because they just don't like to be wrong, because they just love to, they're all about their reputation. So how do they bring him back? They feel like they've been owned by the libs because the United States Supreme Court said bring him back. Donald Trump, in an interview on Air Force One, was like, if the Supreme Court says bring him back, I'm going to bring him back. Turns out during a meeting inside the Oval Office where the president of El Salvador was there, Donald Trump says that I was told that we won. The 9-0 was in our favor. Stephen Miller was like, yeah, it was in our favor. So essentially, that tells you the extent to which Stephen Miller and those guys are just abusing this little feeble-minded, toddler-brained man who's the figurehead, because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's just playing games, and he's planning his little ballroom and just really doing nothing. Told him that they'd won, that it was on their side. So
I promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for
But the Supreme Court's asking to...
Is that
What was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time. No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here, because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked.
And then when they asked him in the Air Force One, Donald Trump was like, well, I'll abide by if the Supreme Court says bring him back, we'll bring him back. They had to bring him back if they were embarrassed. So what they did, they're like, you know what? We're not going to just bring him back. We have to continue to vilify this person unlawfully without any evidence, as they've been doing. And they found out in 2022 Kilmar Obrego-Garcia was transporting some co-workers from one job site to the next. He got pulled over by the police. He didn't have a license. It was expired. So he got off with a warning. And that was the end of it in 2022. Case was done. They went and found, they had to look for something that he was illegally being. He did have a couple of allegations of abuse of his wife, which is not really great. So, and they worked things out according to his wife, and they moved forward. So she didn't press charges. That complaint never turned into indictment, never turned into a charge, never turned into a prosecution, never turned into a conviction or sentencing. So there's no basis for him being called a criminal because she didn't pursue that. So they had to find some basis. What did they do? They found that 2022 stop. They looked at him. He had no criminal records. The closest thing was that 2002 stop. All of a sudden, voila, they said, oh, he's being criminal prosecuted. Pam Bondi does this speech and says that he's a horrible criminal. He's been 9 years. His primary job has been to a human trafficker. He's a child trafficker. He's, solicited prostitute. All these things they're saying, right? I'm going to get to that, to the validity of all this stuff they're saying. And he's being brought back to face charges there because it's a better story rather than saying they put their tail between their legs and they had to just abide by the Supreme Court decision. And this district court judge who was appointed by, I think, Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, this leftist activist judge making us bring him back. And we don't want to bring him back, so we're going to just make this up. And that's what they did. They made it up. Total BS. I'm going to get into why it was BS. So that brings you up to quarter speed. So he's brought back and now in detention in Maryland. How did he get from Texas to Tennessee to Maryland? I'm going to talk about that when I break down these two videos. But this just keeps you up to speed to where we are. So he's in Maryland now in detention. Got these two cases, the one with the Tennessee criminal investigation, and then, of course, the immigration case, where actually it was initiated by him because he sued the Trump administration for sending him to El Salvador, and they responded that, well, we're gonna deport him. We can't send him to El Salvador. That was a mistake, but we still are within our right because he didn't arrive here documented. And I want to say really quickly before I move forward about that arrival when they call people illegal and they didn't come here legally. Here's the thing. The United States government is a nation, because America is a nation of immigrants. Right now there's a viral, you can look it up, viral video clip of Ronald Reagan talking about in any other countries, if you're not born there, you can't call yourself a Mexican if you're born in Mexican. You can't call yourself a German if you weren't born in Germany, blah, blah. In America, once you come here and we accept you an American. This Ronald Reagan said this. Republican, Ronald Reagan said this. So America's a nation of immigrants. Because of that, we recognize that we allow people from all over the world, if they are facing persecution because of their religion, because of political persecution, because of their sexual orientation, no matter what, if you feel like you'll be persecuted, we allow you to come and settle here. It's called asylum. So a lot of people, when they come at the border, or they maybe overstay the visa and they want to switch status from a visitor because they're scared of going home, we have a process, and there's certain visas to allow certain asylums, and then you go for the judge. The minute that you make that claim, you to get a document, you're no longer illegal. You might have arrived undocumented, but the minute you get that documentation, you're now documented. You're going through the process. You shouldn't be called illegal anymore. You shouldn't be called undocumented anymore because you have the documentation telling you to come back. So that was Kilmar. So technically, he was not, the minute that he held himself as an asylum seeker, he wasn't undocumented anymore, even though he started out as an undocumented person. And he was going in, checking in, like a lot of folks did. The Trump administration picked up, the men that he picked up, that sent to El Salvador, a lot of them were either in the country because America also allows people to come as refugees on a temporary basis, or temporary protective status, when they identify a whole nation that's having turmoil, and they allow members from that nation to apply to come, and they give a certain amount of allotment of people to come. So the Venezuelans, the Cubans, the Nicaraguans, the Haitians, the Afghans, the Syrians, all here on a temporary basis. When the turmoil ends in their life, whatever the humanitarian crisis ends, they usually go back. So a lot of those folks, when you come in, you have to actually go through a you have to be vetted. You have to go through a criminal background check. Donald Trump administration took a lot of those men who were checking in recently, regularly, who were part of asylum seekers or refugees or temporary protective status. They were in the process, and that's how they identified them. They said because they had tattoos. Autism Speaks tattoo, a tattoo related to Real Madrid, which is a soccer club. There was a barber, there was a gay hairdresser, there was kids. They didn't care because they're racist. They didn't matter. They just wanted to ground up. Again, they're trying to debrownify and depopulate the United States and remove it as many black and brown people because they're racist, xenophobic people. And that's how they swept all those people off. That's what they did. Even though it was a nation of immigrants, and most people come on that basis. So I digress. But the point of that is to say that when they were coming after him and saying all these things about him, he was actually going through the process. And they get people going through the process, and they get people in immigration courts. A lot of times those MAGAs would say, come the legal way, get in line. We're only going after illegal. These are people that were in line, doing the legal process, weren't necessarily legal because they've been getting a lot of long-time residents who are owners, who are working here. They're superintendents, they're our neighbors, they're students, they're folks who've been here minding their business. Granted, they don't have status, but they're not the worst of the worst. They're contributing. They said something like $38 billion undocumented people contribute to the Social Security, to our federal and state taxes and the sales taxes that they cannot recoup because they don't have papers. They don't have documentation. I mean, yet you're trying to Anyway, again, I digress. But the point of the matter is that he was here, and they had no reason to actually just go target this man, but they were targeting this man nonetheless. So that's that. Let's move forward. Okay, and now I'm giving the background. Let's dissect what this woman said. First, let's play the full clip.
With ties to MS-13, who's here illegally, obviously, and has been credibly accused of human smuggling.
Well, it's these activist judges who time and time again were preventing this criminal illegal alien from being deported for a second time. But let's also remember, who is Kilmar Obrego-Garcia? He was indicted by a grand jury. He's an MS-13 gang member. He was a full-time human trafficker. And if you read the indictment, it's quite egregious what he was involved in, abusing the women under his control. He was soliciting child pornography. This is a despicable individual who, we won't forget, the media tried to force-feed Americans that this is some innocent Maryland father when he's anything but. He will have a new life in Liberia. We're glad to see him go, and that's looking like that will be occurring this week.
All right, so you heard the full clip. Let's start with the Fox News host. What did she say?
To MS-13, who's here illegally, obviously, and has been credibly accused of human smuggling.
Okay, so she says he has ties with MS-13. That's defamatory. She says that there's no proof whatsoever this man has ties to MS-13 at all. Let's start with the fact that they've been accusing him of that since 2017. It's 8 years. What proof do they have he has ties to MS-13? Proof. Normally, Department of Justice, under normal circumstances, not under these band of goons of the inept, unqualified people, because they've fired or drove out all of the qualified people. The old version of Department of Justice, they don't accuse you until they build up a strong case. It has to be layers. It has to be more than just a hearsay. It has to be surveillance. There must be testimony. There must be photos. There has to be videos. There has to be evidence. There has to be a pattern. There has to be lots of different things to show this person is MS-13, overwhelming amount of evidence before they usually prosecute you, because they don't want to prosecute someone unless they can get a conviction. That's the normal standard. I'm going to use some reporting from the Intelligencer on an article did called The Unraveling of Cuauhtemoc Obrego-Garcia. And I'm going to take some tidbits from Tech Dirt, which the article says Judge shreds DOJ's manufactured case against Obrego-Garcia. Just to show you the extent to which the standard that I mentioned recently in terms of what normally is compiled before the Department of Justice in normal times with normal, respectable, experienced, upstanding Department of Justice attorneys would create a evidentiary record that's really solid to make sure that they'll secure a conviction. And let's go through what the magistrate judge determined. She ultimately decided to just release Cuauhtemoc Obrego on his own recognizances rather than hold him in jail. Let's review what was said. In some, she says that there were 3 layers of hearsay. It's layer 1 was an unknown person hand wrote a note about the passenger's birth date. And this is also because they alleging that he was trafficking children, and that was the reason why they say he should not be denied bail. There is no children. There's one person. Someone photographed that note, and the photograph comes from the body camera of the officer who pulled over Kilmar in the group in his vehicle. At the hearing, an FBI agent testified. The FBI agent saw the photo of the body camera footage. It was not the actual officer. So ordinarily, it should be the actual note. If you best case scenario, but let's say they say the note was discarded, they couldn't find it. So next case, you have the photograph. It would have been better if the officer who actually was wearing the body camera would have testified, but they didn't bring him. They brought someone who saw the photograph. So that's 3 layers of hearsay. Now, what the problem is that it's not clear whether it's 2007 or 2001. Why does that matter? If it was 2001, then that means the passenger was an adult, and so the allegation that he was trafficking minors, which is false because there's one person, or a minor hinged on this note. And it looks like it could have been a 1, which makes a person like above 18. So if it was 2007, then a person would have been a minor at the time. And then on top of it, they didn't have the name. They couldn't identify who this person was, their name, who they were. So it's kind of like that's not the type of standard that you would normally bring because they don't have the evidence to convict. If they would present this evidence to anyone, the magistrate judge was like, this is going to be laughed out. A judge and a jury is not going to take your word for it because you don't have the evidence on it. So that's what the Intelligencer just summarized. Let me go through really quickly Tech Dirt, which is a little more detailed. Tech Dirt goes a little bit further because they mentioned the agent's name is Special Agent Joseph. That's who was testifying at the hearing. And they mentioned the fact that it's several layers of hearsay, but also mentioned the fact that they asked they actually included what the judge said in the hearing. She says, "Listen, if you'd have had the actual officer there, we could have asked the officer, did the passenger look like a 15-year-old? Was he shaving yet? Was his build? And because they didn't offer that officer, it was hard for them to just say for certain this 7." That looks like it could have been a 1. It looks like somebody could have actually written over it. It looked like it could have been tampered with. So that's not good evidence. You don't have them here. So it's kind of hard for us to attest to that. And I also want to get into this other portion. Then Tech Dirt talks about the evidence. The people who they offered as the witnesses, there are 2 people. One of them is a 5-time deported actual human smuggler. He's acknowledged as a ringleader of a human smuggling operation who has attained for himself an early release from federal prison and a delay of 6 months deportation for providing information for the government. All right. The second male cooperator it's like he's a family member of the first one, and also the even without discounting the way the testimony, the first and the second male cooperators, it's like multiple layers of hearsay. And she says the statements defy common sense. Here's why she says it defy common sense. They say that Cuauhtemoc Obrego typically took his children with him during these alleged smuggling trips from Maryland to Houston and back. 2,900 round trip miles, as often as 3 to 4 times a week. The sheer number of hours that would be required to maintain this schedule, which would consistently be more than 120 hours per week of driving time, approached physical impossibility. For that reason, the court finds the statements of the first and second witness unreliable. That established that this case involves a minor victim. So this is the level of like incompetency and lack of witness testimony. There's no way they can secure a conviction. So why are they bringing this flimsy case? They should be embarrassed about this, actually. That's all they have to tie him to MS-13. That's it. Nothing else. Every single time you hear them say, he's an MS-13 member, they're slandering him. They're committing defamation. And if anyone who says that, who's not a government official, who doesn't have qualified immunity, and qualified immunity is limited to a certain extent. Anyone who repeats that and calls him an MS-13 member when he's not, because that's a gang, a serious accused somebody being part of a murderous gang that the Trump administration has declared as a terrorist organization. Gang members are not terrorist organizations, but whatever. Every single time they say that anyone who repeats that, including that Fox News host, committed defamation, because there's no proof. Where's the proof that is? You can't just take the government administration's word for it. Then she says this other thing. She says he's here illegal, obviously. No, if this man is here with documentation, he might have arrived undocumented. The minute he claims asylum, he's now an asylum seeker. There are people in the United States who are asylum applicants. Once you're an asylum applicant, you are an applicant for a certain benefit status in the United States. You are not here illegally. They know you're here. You might have arrived illegally. The minute you claim asylum, you didn't move from an illegal to a documentation to asylum seeker. So he's not here illegally. So second way of defamation. And the third thing, what she says he was credibly accused of human smuggling. Let's see who the credible accusers are. Let's go through that. The prosecution's star witness is a man who's a ringleader of a human smuggling operation. He was twice convicted as a felon. He was deported from the United States 5 times. He was released from a 30-month prison sentence in exchange for his cooperation. So your star witness is a criminal, a human trafficker himself. And the other corporate witness is also a felon, a prior deportee. He's a relative of the first report. So we got 2 criminals. That's your star witness. Their testimonies align, but if you were being accused of a crime and you were being accused by a bunch of criminals, the credibility of the witnesses, they all have incentive to lie. He was released in cooperation for them to just make up this thing. And that's why the judge was like, I'm not sure about this. And that is why the magistrate judge who first got Cuauhtemoc Obrego's case was willing to let him go, because he says, these are your witnesses, please. No, thank you. So when that Fox News witness says there's credible accusations of smuggling, no, it's a lie. It's not true. That's a lie. It's not an untruth. It's not a misinformation. It's a lie. There's no credible accusation of human smuggling, because he was not credibly accused of human smuggling, and he's not illegal. So let's start there. Now, as to Trisha, let's get to the first thing she says when she responds. She says it's activist judges that are preventing him from being deported. Okay, there are 2 judges right now in this matter, and a magistrate judge. The magistrate judge has nothing to do with the deportation. That case in Tennessee was related to the accusation that he was human smuggling, but that had nothing to do with deportation. It's a criminal indictment. You go to jail. You don't get deported. So the magistrate judge has nothing to do with the ability for them to deport him. And second, Judge Waverly Crenshaw, which is the district court judge that's adjudicating the full case, also is adjudicating a case regarding the criminal conviction. nothing to do with deportation. So those two judges aren't stopping the Trump administration deporting him. Similarly, Judge Paula Zenas in the District Court, she's not stopping them from deporting. You know what's stopping them from being deported? The fact that they keep lying and claiming that these various different African nations are going to deport him, and they're going to deport him to these various different African nations. And each time, the African nation say, no, we did not agree for you to send this man to our country, to deport him to our country. It started with Eswatini. They said he's going to be deported there. And that was not true. So they had to adjust and amend the court documents and say, okay, well, he's not going to Eswatini. Then they started popping off and saying, Kilmar's going to Uganda. And the Ugandan government was like, no, you're not going to Uganda. Then finally they were like, well, he's going to Ghana. We're sending him to Ghana. He's going to Ghana. The Ghanaian official not only said he's not going to Ghana, he actually also said, and also, please stop popping off and going in social media announcing definitive plans and telling people that we from Ghana are accepting him when we haven't even talked about that yet. So each single time they keep saying that he's going to be deported to these countries, the people of the country is like, that's not proof. That's not true. When this was in front of, so it's not the judges that's stopping you from deporting. It's the fact that you have no place to deport him. At some point, they said they offered to Cuauhtemoc Obrego to go to Costa Rica, and I think he might have said, "Okay, I'll consider it." He withdrew that, but they said, if you confess or you admit it as a consequence and admit to be MS-13, which he says, no, I'm not going to admit to something I'm not doing. So even though initially he agreed to be deported to Costa Rica, he withdrew that because the conditions of it was him to admit to something that he does not want to admit to, the fact that he's not an MS-13 gang member. I'm going to get to the MS-13 gang member again for a second, the accusation that he's an MS-13 gang member. So they cannot deport him. So it's not the activist judges are stopping it. It's because you guys can't find a person to get it. And that's the point of her recent hearing. Before I get to her recent hearing, I want to say again about the MS-13 really quickly. When Kilmar Obrego-Garcia was actually sent to that torture prison in El Salvador, a senior prison official said he separated, this according to Kilmar's declaration, the folks who had gang affiliation based on their tattoos and put them in a separate cell from those without, knowing that the gang folks are usually violent, they probably unalive one another, and they're just brutal, and they want to separate the folks who have nothing with the gang from them. Kilmar said the senior prison guard who's familiar with MS-13, because MS-13 is gangs originated in El Salvador. He's a senior prison guard in El Salvador, looked at his tattoos and said, you're clear, and put him in another cell. His declaration comes from the perspective of observing the actual gang members. So based on that, if you were putting up in a court of law, who would you believe more credible? A senior prison official in a prison in El Salvador, which normally sees MS-13 gang members, or the gringos who are just throwing people and saying, you're a gang member, and it's based on like autism speaks tattoos they're mistaking for gang signals. Someone who has like a Real Madrid, they're saying, oh, that's a gang symbol. Someone they sent to see caught was actually standing next to somebody who just did a peace sign. And they said, oh, that's a gang sign. So they're just throwing people in jail and no credibility whatsoever. That is on one side. Then you have the senior gang official who says that your tattoos are not free. So based on that, the man is not MS-13. Someone tried to say that the knuckles said MS-13 and spelled that out, which is not necessarily true. That's slander and also defamation. Dumbass Donald Trump, the person wrote MS-13, said this symbol stands for M, this symbol, and they wrote it in pencil over top. Dumbass Donald Trump thought that the annotations was actually on his figure. That's how stupid Donald Trump is. But for the most part, that doesn't belong. That's not true. So every time Donald Trump and all those other people, and especially people who don't have immunity because they're not in government, repeat the lie, every single time, every single person is on the hook for defamation because he's not an MS-13 gang member. And the way I'm confident in it, because the prison guard, the senior prison guard, I believe has more credibility than Donald Trump and anyone in his administration. And the senior things that means he's most likely not MS-13. And so here you have this Fox News saying he's an MS-13 gang member. Defamation. Sue their asses. And each time her or anyone else said that, sue them as well. Fox News. They're going to be sued. So keep it up. Now, Trisha McLaughlin, she's government, so she might have some level of immunity, but for the most part, she says off the break that it's the activist judges. So she's on TV calling the judge that has the ability to either throw Donald Trump's lawsuit out or adjudicate in their favor or not. They're calling her name. She's saying she's an activist judge. Activists mean like you're going beyond the law. No, you guys deported somebody who an immigration judge says don't deport. That's how is she activist? You guys admitted it. That doesn't make her act. She's following the law. There's nothing she did that's active. You guys are the ones. It's so crazy. So the activist judges is an accusation against the judge. It's stupid to do. And so that pissed her off. So she says, come into court. And there was a hearing today at 2:00 because she's calling the active judges and she's saying these things that he's going to be deported to Liberia. And during a previous hearing, the law says you have to have a place to send someone. That's what our law says. 3 strikes you're out is what Cuauhtemoc Obrego-Garcia said. And the judge was like, yeah, the law says that in order for you to detain someone, you have to have a place immediately we're going to send them to. And the fact that you keep going to these different, announcing in social media, these different places that have not agreed. So in the hearing today, she says, I am tired of you saying, Trisha McLaughlin said, he's going to be deported by Friday. And she said, what are you talking about? There is an active criminal case that's still going on. And you guys said you said in the beginning, you're going to try to deport him after he's found guilty of this criminal case. The criminal case is still going on. Also, when she called this hearing to ask them to answer to Trisha McLaughlin popping off, she discovers that they had made his credible case of fearing hearing at the same time. And she says, there's no way you didn't know that I called you at the same time and y'all scheduled his persecution hearing the same time I called you guys to answer to Trisha McLaughlin saying that they're going to send him to Liberia after I said case is closed as to that. Y'all have 3 bites of the apples. You can't keep doing this. And also I haven't seen any evidence that the Liberia has even said this. And I don't trust y'all because you guys announced 3 different countries that he's going to be deported and all 3 countries did not say that. So you have no credibility. So just because you say he's going to Liberia, and when she brought him for the hearing, they were just like, they had no proof. It was like tentative. So why are Trisha McLaughlin on TV saying he's going to be deported by Friday to Liberia when there's no evidence and the docket's nowhere to say Liberia has even inked this is a final? Why are you on TV saying stuff that's not final in the courts, dumbass? Ditz, you blonde bimbo. Anyway, she's always like, no. How old are you? This is what happens when you have just sycophants who are unqualified for their jobs. I don't know where they pulled this damn child from. But little girl, you can't be on, you can actually, because that helps the case. That's because you're going off. That's why the judge was like, you know what? I'm not going to do contempt. She needs to do contempt. But I'm going to be monitoring what's happened in the criminal case. Y'all not going to deport him before this? They said no. They first initially said you weren't deport him. Why are y'all trying to rush to deport him? The criminal case is not done yet, and you're stepping on my toes. That's what happened at the end of the hearing. But it's because her ass is, he's going to Liberia. Yeah. Stupid. Now that's that case. Now around the same time, Judge Waverly Crenshaw was going in on them because what Trisha McLaughlin did, popping off as usual, saying all this other stuff. So he was like, you know what? He had charged. He said, they had asked previously to stop the lawyers, so Tom Blanche and Pam Bondi from, the lawyers in the case from talking about it. There was a gag order, and the Kilmar's lawyers had asked to expand that to Christy Nome and Pam Bondi, and should be like Trisha McLaughlin, that whole office. He's since done that. Now he said, yeah, I realize what you're saying, because you can't get a fair trial when they're trying to litigate this. In fact, thank you to Renee, who I follow on Threads for tracking this. The judge actually had charts of all the times that the administration mentioned this man. Like, how can you get a fair trial when you're trying to litigate this in court? And not just litigating, you're litigating based on a lie. Because, let me tell you something else. I forget that, what's her face, Ted said. So when she says he's a full-time MS-13 member, she's a full MS-13 member, she has no proof of that. There's no evidence of that. She's just saying stuff. And one of the things the gag order says is that you can say he's alleged to be an MS-13. You cannot say he is a MS-13 member. And here's her ditzy ass saying he's an MS-13 member. And the gag order.
An illegal alien from being deported for a second time. But let's also remember, who is Kilmar Obrego-Garcia? He was indicted by a grand jury. He's an MS-13 gang member. He was a full-time human trafficker. And if you read the indictment, it's quite egregious what he was involved in.
Order says you cannot say that. You can say he's alleged to be a gang member. You have no proof of that. So you can't say definitively on TV. Stupid ass. And then she says he's been full-time. What the freak? The man was not a full-time. That's a lie. Defamation. You can't say that. He needs to sue her ass. She don't get the immunity because that's right. That point is willful, because not only not only do you have a gag order telling you not to say that, you repeatedly do it beyond the gag order. By now you should know somebody should have told her ass to stop saying this, and should continue. It's not willful. So any immunity she would have had because she wasn't told, the minute you continue to do it beyond the court order, you do not get the benefit of qualified immunity. Put a lien on her tracks. Lean on her tracks. They said no. They first initially said you want to deport him. Why are y'all trying to rush to deport him? The criminal case is not done yet, and you're stepping on my toes. That's what happened at the end of the hearing. But it's because her ass is, he's going to Liberia. Yeah. Stupid. Now that's that case. Now around the same time, Judge Waverly Crenshaw was going in on them because what Trisha McLaughlin did is popping off as usual, saying all this other stuff. So he was like, you know what? He had charged. He said, they had asked previously to stop the lawyers, so Tom Blanche and Pam Bondi, from, the lawyers in the case, from talking about it. There was a gag order, and the Kilmar's lawyers had asked to expand that to Christy Nome and Pam Bondi, and should be like Trisha McLaughlin, that whole office. He's since done that. And now he said, yeah, I realize what you're saying, because you can't get a fair trial when they're trying to litigate this. In fact, thank you to Renee, who I follow on Threads for tracking this. The judge actually had charts of all the times that the administration mentioned this man. Like, how can you get a fair trial when you're trying to litigate this in court? And not just litigating, you're litigating based on a lie. Because, let me tell you something else. I forget that, what's her face, Ted said. So when she says he's a full-time MS-13 member, she's a full MS-13 member, she has no proof of that. There's no evidence of that. She's just saying stuff. And one of the things the gag order says is that you can say he's alleged to be an MS-13. You cannot say he is a MS-13 member. And here's her ditzy ass saying he's an MS-13 member. And the gag order says you cannot say that. You can say he's alleged to be a gang member. You have no proof of that. So you can't say definitively on TV. Stupid ass. And then she says he's been full-time. What the freak? The man was not a full-time. That's a lie. Defamation. You can't say that. He needs to sue her ass. She don't get the immunity because that's right. That point is willful, because not only do you have a gag order telling you not to say that, you repeatedly do it beyond the gag order. By now you should know somebody should have told her ass to stop saying this, and should continue. It's not willful. So any immunity she would have had because she wasn't told, the minute you continue to do it beyond the court order, you do not get the benefit of qualified immunity. Lean on her tracks. Lean on her tracks. No, they cheat. That's not gonna be. Put a lien on her house. Sue her ass. Didn't you say if you read the indictment, it's pre-agrees what he's abused and doing? No.
He was indicted by a grand jury. He's an MS-13 gang member. He was a full-time human trafficker. And if you read the indictment, it's quite egregious what he was involved in: abusing the women under his control. He was soliciting child pornography.
Again, it's allegation. He's not someone said he abused women, and also that's an allegation. You can't say what he did. Dumbass. She said he was soliciting child pornography. Again, no, he's maybe alleged for soliciting child pornography. And also, here's the thing: they allege that she was trafficking children. So all the thing, every time she says is defamation. By now they told you don't do that shit, and you keep doing it. So keep it up, Trisha McLaughlin. That's why you're helping this man win a defamation lawsuit against you and helping him get his case removed. So here's some other stuff. I'm going to, again, shout out to Ash Renee 411 on Threads for flagging this, but some other stuff that the Waverly Crenshaw said as a result of his orders regarding Trisha McLaughlin popping off. He questioned the Robert McGuire, who's the attorney AG who brought this case. Like, how did you bring this case? Were you influenced by Department of Justice, by the folks in DC? And he says no. So the judge Waverly says cases do not magically appear on the desk of prosecutor. The motivations of people who place the files on prosecutor's desk are highly relevant in this case. You got lying asses. Then at some point, She says that they need to stop. The compliance will ensure future statements post a likelihood of a taint. He essentially goes after the Trump administration. Cuauhtemoc Obrego keeps saying these things, and he says that he's discussed government employees have made extrajudicial statements that are troubling, especially where many of them are exaggerated, if not simply inaccurate. That's everything that Heifer was saying on TV, exaggerating stuff. They're not accurate. It says these statements made allegations regarding his character or reputation, express government officials' views on his guilt or innocence. For example, Department of Homeland Security said that he was MS-13 member, a human trafficker, serial domestic abuser, and child predator. That statement, like it is contrary. That's got none of all those allegations. And it says child predator. Let me tell you about the child predator. It's triple hearsay, the judge says, and that's why the magistrate judge was going to let Kilmar Obrego go, because to prove that there's no children in there's one alleged 15-year-old. Why I say alleged? The only evidence they have is because it was back in 2022. By the way, someone took a picture of the document that the police officer site says. So it's triple hearsay. That police officer is not here to testify. A picture, someone it passed down, and the one to make it look like the person was 15. The person was over. They changed it to a 7, so it looked like the person was 15 when it was 1. So the person was over 21. So there was no children in the car. So their whole thing about saying that's why they said they wanted him to be denied bail, because they said, oh, he was trafficking a minor children. There's no children, and the one children they have there, the government even admitted that the child that they said was there, they didn't even talk to that child. They didn't have it. So the case is very weak. And put a pin in that. The case is weak. It's the witnesses are convicts and criminals. And there's no evidence that he's a MS-13 gang member. They have not presented it since then, nothing. And then the allegation that he's trafficking children really is just a child, and then that child is not there. And then the evidence to prove that it's a child, the birth date has been changed. It looked like that's the weakest ass case. So it's a weak ass case, and that's why the magistrate judge was like, I'm not keeping you in prison for this weak ass case. You can get out. Kilmar just chose to stay in because he thought they were going to try to deport him. And the judge is like, that's why the judge. Then let me tell you why the judge says there's likely vindictive prosecution. In addition to all the evidence, he says, Tom Blanche decided to go on Laura Ingraham and say something. And before I tell you what Tom Blanche said, which allowed Kilmar to reach the high burden in order to show vindictive prosecution, that's very hard. Very rarely can you show that. But Tom Blanche's video, again, on Laura Ingraham's show, was just what they needed, because the judge was like, okay, before I play this video, you should know, I'm going to play with you. There was a Republican and a Democratic senator who asked Pam Bondi during her hearing, will you find the person first and then find a reason to prosecute them? Would you do that? Because that's wrong. And that's what she said to the Republican.
One of the suggestions of my colleagues, I wrote it down. He said he was concerned that, quote, you would start with a name to prosecute and then look for a crime, unquote. It made me immediately think of District Attorney Bragg in New York, who actually in 2019 ran a campaign in large part suggesting that if you elect me, I'll prosecute Donald Trump.
I believe there were others as well, Senator.
Right. How long were you a prosecutor?
18 years.
Okay. Is there anything in your background to suggest that my colleague's suggestion that you would start with a name and then look for a crime, is there anything in your background that would give him basis to say that?
No, Senator.
Okay. Have you ever done that?
No, Senator. And I think I have a lot of former colleagues sitting behind me who would back me up on that as well.
Do you plan to do that as Attorney General?
Of course not, Senator. I hope no Attorney General going forward would ever do that.
And this is what she says to the Democrat.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I think the concern is that weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure. And we want to make sure that that's not the case, that you remain independent, that you remain able to and willing to tell the president no when that's necessary to protect the Constitution and the integrity of the department. So that's where I'm asking these questions.
You cannot find a person and find them. Now, listen to what Todd Blanche said to Laura. You can watch the whole thing and then tell me what you find out. And we'll talk on the back because I'm going to dissect what he said on the other side. So first, listen to what he said.
Joining us. When did the administration decide to open up this new investigation of Obrego-Garcia?
Well, I mean, look, the president and the Department of Justice since January 20th have been doing everything that we can to deport criminals who are here illegally. And that's what we did with this man. We deported him. We got him out of here. And a judge in Maryland and many members of Congress, we had a senator fly down to meet with him, questioned that decision and said, oh no, he's just a family man. And so we said, okay, we'll look into it. And when we started looking into it, and we have great law enforcement officers and prosecutors who started studying this man and investigating him, and what we found is that we were right. We were right. He is a criminal who should be deported. And at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to protect the American people and to keep our country safe. And so he was indicted, and he was indicted on very serious charges because of very serious conduct that we learned about during our investigation. And so he's returned, but he's not returned for any other reason than to face justice, period.
So this had nothing to do with Judge Boasberg's decision, which I thought was, over the top. Supreme Court saying, you got to try to facilitate the return. So you're saying tonight that the warning of possible contempt charges against administration officials, none of that had anything to do with the investigation?
No, I mean, first of all, the Supreme Court stayed any contempt proceedings by Judge Boasberg. That case has been stayed. In this case, we had a judge in Maryland tell us that, oh no, there's not any evidence that he's a member of MS-13. You had no right to deport him. And so what should we do as a Department of Justice when a judge is accusing us of doing something wrong? We have an obligation to everybody, including you, to investigate it. And that's exactly what we did. And so the reason why he was returned and the facilitation that brought him back here is not a judge. It's an arrest warrant issued by a grand jury from the Middle District of Tennessee, charging him with 2 counts of very serious charges involving 9 years of smuggling aliens all over this country, from Texas to Maryland and other states. That's why he's back, and that's why the government of El Salvador agreed to bring him back, because of a federal arrest warrant.
Of course, the left is going crazy about this, and they're kind of taking a victory lap. I don't know why they decided that this individual was who they wanted to tie their political futures to, but on one of your favorite commentators, Matthew Dowd, made some allegations that are kind of ricocheting across the Democrat Party against the DOJ. Watch.
The whole thing smells. Watching Pam Bondi's press conference, my takeaway from that is it's deplorable. She just makes these outlandish claims. It's not what American justice is supposed to be. It is basically, we're going to engineer this in such a way as we decide somebody we don't like, and we're going to do with them what we want. And when we're caught, we're going to bring the full force of the American government to try to find anything we possibly can to rationalize the mistakes we made to begin with.
Todd, is that accurate? Rationalizing the deportation of Obrego-Garcia after the fact. That's what Dowd is alleging here.
I very much agree that it's deplorable, but what's deplorable is not only the reaction to this indictment, but the conduct as alleged in the indictment of this man. I don't think that Mr. Dowd has bothered to read the indictment or the publicly filed documents that lay out the proof against him. If anybody in this country thinks it's okay to do what he's alleged to have done, we have big problems. If anybody in this country thinks it's okay for a United States senator to use our taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to have a meal with a man who, as is alleged, has spent 9 years moving illegal aliens all throughout this country, including children. I mean, read the indictment. This isn't Attorney General Bondi making things up. This is a grand jury indictment. That means, as we all know, that a grand jury heard evidence. And you can see from the indictment the source of that evidence. This is not a case of us doing something that's deplorable. The conduct is deplorable. It's very disappointing. It's very disappointing to have people on the left now complaining when they're the same ones that were accusing the Department of Justice and DHS of doing something so wrong and so horrible by deporting this man. And then when we actually investigate our conduct, we investigate who this person is, and we find out that not only is he somebody who needed to be deported because he's, as alleged, a member of MS-13, a terrorist organization, but he also spent 9 years, basically his full-time job, according to the indictment and the publicly filed documents, doing what he did. For people to react and all of a sudden accuse Attorney General Bondi of doing anything wrong here, it's actually extraordinarily disappointing to our law enforcement partners, the people that worked this case hard to find out whether, did we get it right? Is the left right? Is the senators that went down to visit him right that this man should never have been deported? Let's look at this. Let's look at the evidence that we have.
When he says we'll look into it, that's exactly what it is. You find a person and you look for a reason to prosecute them. They identified him and they said we need to look for him. And that's what they found in 2022 case. You're not supposed to do that. And he admitted it in public. He said we have great law enforcement officers and prosecutors started studying this man. What does that mean? They mean he started looking for a reason to arrest him, and they couldn't find anything. That's why they found that arrest thing, the arrest of 2022. Here's the thing. Cuauhtemoc Obrego-Garcia's lawyers said in 2022 there was about 1,000 or so people who had traffic stops or whatever. And of those people, a fraction of those people actually were charged with something. Not Kilmar, though, who did something like chargeable. And they had all of the hearings, whatever, in 2022. Only one person did not get the hearing right after, within the same year, Kilmar. He had it 3 years later. I rest my case. Is that not So they didn't have anything. So they looked for something. And that's the closest thing they found was a traffic stop in 2022 when he was let go because he was transporting co-workers from one place to the next. And you know what happens is when you are in the country undocumented or you're in the country and you're looking for work, a lot of you guys have a network. When someone has a car, someone has a license, y'all just going, that's all it was. That's not human trafficking. That's not human smuggling necessarily. That's just people just traveling to work. And that's not human smuggling or human trafficking. That's just co-workers catching a ride to go to work and going to different sites. Where's the smuggling involved? Why are they saying he has money? Where's the proof that he was money exchanged for that work? Where's he getting money for this other than gas money? They don't have that. None of that's on the record. And they're not going to be able to present that evidence. So the whole case is just a bunch of bullshit. When he said what we found, we was right, that's the key word, we found. So you were looking for something. You can't find something unless you were looking for something. And they said we were right. So essentially, you're not supposed to identify a person and then go look for a reason to prosecute. You're not supposed to do that. He admitted that publicly. So that's not good. So because of that, that's why Kilmar was able to overcome that burden. Let me play one more thing. When he says he spent 9 years moving illegal aliens, including children, again, the indictment doesn't mention children. There's one person, and there's no proof that one person is even a child. The only evidence of it is they tried to allege that there's the original officer put the date of birth of that person. It looks like the person was 2001. It looks like they changed it from a 1 to 7 to make it look like it's just a person underage. That's the evidence. No children. One person, not even a child, and then the government, again, like I said before, admitted they can't find this person. So where is this child? So why are you, the Attorney General, on Fox News saying that this man smuggled children when there's no children, there's one person, and then also there's no child? So it's a freaking lie. It's a slander. You're just on TV litigating stuff, lying and making up stuff. And then also he's saying, even though eventually he says alleged, the way he couched it is like 9 years this man was doing this, smuggling children. What do you think that sounds? You're litigating is messing up the guy to have a fair trial. That's why the case is going to get tossed out. That's why Kilmar met the burden of showing that it's malicious prosecution. And the court, the judge says the Trump administration must present all. He said we talked to our, remember he said I talked to my law enforcement officers and our prosecutors across the thing. We want to see this communications. So the judge says Kilmar Obrego lawyers have the right to see the communications and also to bring Tom Blanche to answer that. Now Tom Blanche, they're trying to say no, he can't prosecute. They're saying all the information is already before and they're claiming privilege. How can you claim privilege when you said it on TV? You were on Laura Ingram's show saying these things, saying you communicated with these people. So even if you're saying you can't share, the fact that you share, what did you communicate? You put it on TV. What privilege can you claim? That's what they're claiming, some sort of privilege right now. That's what they're doing. The judge eventually at the end of the hearing says, well, in terms of her privilege, I'm going to look at it first and I'm going to assess it. And if I determine it's not privilege because it may not be privileged, I'm going to let it release. It's not going to be, I'm not going to just like blankly just say you can't get this information. I'm going to check first. And based on my review, if it's not, I'm going to give it to the other side. How are you going to prosecute somebody for something? And you prosecute, you have all these inside things for base of prosecution, and you saying the other side can't get access to what the judge is like, nah, bruh. We can look at that. So that's the end of that. That's what happened at the end of that case. But it's, again, self-owned. Because they didn't have to go on TV. Trisha McLaughlin didn't have to go and say, he did this. They did all this stuff and popping off and stuff like that. In the end, the judge says not only that, he expanded his gag order to say, stop litigating this in case. So not just the lawyers, not just Pam Bondi and him, anybody in the Department of Justice. Stop talking about this man. Shut. Zip, 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 zip. Yeah, so that's what they do. And I'm in the dockets. I have lots of examples from this. I don't want to go, this video is already long. So that's an example when I say that they're always on social media popping off because they're always playing to their base. They're always talking to the MAGA, the 22% they're represented, that they speak to of the country that voted for Donald Trump. 32% of the electorate. The majority of people did not. So rather than just be steady and follow the law and be decent people, they're just punishing this man and then litigating their case in courts and can't shut the hell up. So thank you, Trisha McLaughlin, for big ass mouth. Now you can't say anything. And if you say anything else, it's just adding on to the lawsuit. Hopefully they share this video widely and support my channel if you're more interested in this by just sharing this video. That's what you can do, number one, for me. And binge watch a playlist if you like. Let other people know. Sign up for my newsletter where you can get this information on a weekly basis. You can join my Substack and other communities where I share information, insights. And if you want something in exchange for your support, you can get my Know Your Rights trackers, which I charge just $1 for. Know Your Rights cards. I have a case tracker so you can keep track of the cases. I have links where the various different platforms that are tracking these cases, and there's lots of information in my case tracker. You can get my templates. I have templates for mixed status families, and then also for content creators, which is a fraction of the cost if you were to hire an attorney to draft each one of those documents in my case tracker one by one for you, personalize it and customize it for you. You're looking at $10,000. I just charge $97 for that. And for after Good Friday, because we're having a mass blackout at some point. Actually, no, I think in the mass blackout you can shop black-owned businesses. Yeah, I might do that. I might have a sale for that around the holidays, and you can get that for cheaper. But for now, if you want to just support me now, you can get that case, those templates for $97. Oh, I actually have merch, and I'm wearing one of them. I just got this in. It's No Human is Illegal. I also have No Human is Illegal shirts. This is really soft material. It's warm inside. It's comfortable. It's fleece right here. I have different colors. Check it out. You can find it. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can get it below. If not, you go to jjlegal.com and get a link to my merch. That's how you can support me here. So that was a wonderful takedown. I hope that was interesting for you. Share this video so more people know. So when they're popping off, so you know.